A warm welcome to everyone to VARC ASO by InsideIIM. Since CAT 22 is very near, so today we are going to solve a full-length mock paper. And to start with, we are solving actual CAT 2021 VARC slot 1 paper. So today we are going to see what should be the ideal strategy to solve the full paper, how to deal with and how to get the right questions to solve. So let's get started. So this is the paper. So first of all, the first step that should be there to solve the paper is to skim through it to find the right questions to solve. And you can start with any section, be it VA or be it RC. It depends upon your strengths. So when I was an aspirant, I used to experiment during mocks. I used to start with VA in some section, in some mocks, and RCs in some mocks. So after solving a few of them, I got to know which strategy suits me the best, in which way I perform in a better way. And hence I figured out that I should solve RC first. And this is very subjective and it depends on person to person. So it all depends on you which section you are more comfortable with to start. Hence, you can solve any one of them. So first, like as I already mentioned that I prefer solving RCs first. So I'll skim through all the RCs. So what should you do when you are solving RCs? You shouldn't start with the first RC. You should skim through all the RCs that are present in the paper and find the familiar topics, the topic that you are comfortable reading. At times there are topics that are not easy to read for you because some people are good at psychology, some are good at scientific articles, or some are good with economics articles. So it depends upon your strengths, your interest, and so on. So just skim through the passages and see which passage suits your interest and which will be an easy read for you. So let me go through the first passage. It talks about the sleets of hand that contain consumption with virtue are a central theme in a thirst for empire, a sweeping and richly detailed history of tea by the historian Erica Rappaport. How did tea evolve from an obscure China drink to a universal beverage imbued with civilizing properties? The answer in brief revolves around the conflation, not only by profit-motivated marketers, but by a wide variety of interest groups. While abundant historical groups have allowed the study of how tea itself moved from east to west, Rappaport is focused on the movement of the idea of tea to suit particular purposes. So, what is this? I have read the first paragraph and it gives me a fair idea what the passage is all about. So, after reading the first paragraph, we have figured out that it is talking about tea and a book, and a book is being talked about in which there is a mention of tea and how tea has become evolved from an obscure drink of China to a universal drink. It has shifted from east to west. So hence it is about the westernization of tea and the author is talking about some book. So this is what the passage 1 is all about. Let me read the other passages as well. The second is for the Maya of the classic period who lived in southern Mexico and Central America between 2050 and 900 CE. The category of persons was not coincidental with human beings, as if for us. That is, human beings were persons, but other non-human entities could be person too. In order to explore the slippage of categories between humans and persons, I examined a very specific category of ancient Maya images found painted in scenes on ceramic vessels. I sought out instances in which faces are shown on inanimate objects. Consider my iPhone, which needs to be fed with electricity every night, swaddled in a protective bumper, and enjoys communicating with other fellow phone beings. Does it have personhood because it is connected to me, drawing this resource from me as an owner or source? For the Maya, the answer was no. Non-human persons were not tethered to specific humans, and they did not derive their personhood from a connection with a human. It's a profoundly democratizing way of understanding the world. Humans are not more important persons. We are just one of many kinds of person who inhabit this world. So this passage is talking about findings from the Maya of classic period and how there has been said that humans are the not only Like there are other non-human entities also which can be categorized as persons. So then the author gives an example of iPhone. So it is talking about the identity, humans, and so on. So this passage is all about this. Then we have third passage. We cannot travel outside a neighborhood without passports. We must wear the same plain clothes. We must exchange our house every 10 years. We cannot avoid labor. We all go to bed at the same time. We have religious freedom, but we cannot deny that the soul dies with the body, since but for the fear of punishment, they would have nothing but contempt for the laws and customs of society. In most time, for much of the population, given the plenty and security on offer, such restraints would not have seemed overly unreasonable. For modern readers, however, utopia appears to rely upon relentless transparency, the repression of variety, and the curtailment of privacy. Utopia provides security, but at what price? In both the external and internal relations, indeed, it seemed perilously dystopian. So, after reading this passage, it is talking about something from More's time and how, like, a utopian world would have worked and how it is not feasible or something. So, after reading this passage, I am not much comfortable with this passage. On a personal note, it depends from person to person. I am not much familiar with these kind of RCs, so I'll keep this in on hold and I'll try to solve it at the later part of the paper. When I am done solving the questions I am comfortable with, and after that, if I have time, I'll go with this RC. Let's read the fourth RC as well. Cuttlefish are full of personality, as behavioral ecologist Alexandra Snell found out while researching the cephalod's potential to display self-control. Self-control is thought to be the cornerstone of intelligence, as it is an important prerequisite for complex decision-making and planning for the future, says Snell. So this passage is talking about cuttlefish and its behavior to exhibit self-control. So I found this RC a very general RC. So I'll prefer starting with this one because it is a breezy read. It is easy to read this kind of an RC. So I'll prefer starting with this RC because others are more on the philosophy side, on which I think I'll do those RCs once I have a momentum of reading. So to start with, I'll find the most easiest RC which I am comfortable reading. Also, we have to keep in mind while solving RCs that our reading speed should be fast. So as soon as you get your paper on the screen, the first step should be go through all RC's first paragraph quickly. Skim through the RCs and then you will order them in the sequence in your priority order, which topics you are comfortable with, and then gain momentum while reading and then solve the RCs in the same way. So before solving any RC, the other important thing that you should keep in mind is skim through the questions as well, because when you skim through the questions, you'll get to know what is being asked, and then you can put more focus on those points while reading, so you don't have to read again and again. Since we already know that the paper is only of 40 minutes, so it can be a challenge for us to read it again and again because we are already short of time. The timer would be running and then it adds extra pressure. So we have to read in such a way that we don't waste time and we read quickly and we get most of the information out of the RC in the first read. And if we have to read it the second time, we know where to look at, what is being asked in the question, and we don't have to read the full RC again. So that's how we are going to solve the RCs. So this is the number one. So we are going to solve this. So to start with, I'm going to solve this RC. So I'll read it quickly. Cuttlefish are full of personality, as behavioral ecologist Alexandra Snell found out while researching the cephalod's potential to display self-control. Self-control is thought to be the cornerstone of intelligence, as it is an important prerequisite for complex decision-making and planning for the future, says Snell. Snell's study used a modified version of the marshmallow test during the original marshmallow test. Psychologist Walter Mitchell presented children between age 4 and 6 with one marshmallow. He told them that if they waited 15 minutes and didn't eat it, he would give them a second marshmallow. So guys, you can pause this video and you can go through the complete RC. And now I'll switch to the questions. So before reading this RC, let's go through the questions. So we need we know which part of the RC to focus on. All the following constitute a point of difference between original and modified versions of the marshmallow test, except that. Okay. So the first question is about the marshmallow test and the difference between the former and latter one. So wherever in the passage we find the mention of these tests, we'll pay more attention like what are the differences mentioned there and what are not. So this we'll keep in mind. Which one of the following, if true, would complement the passage's findings? So while reading through the passage, we also need to keep in mind what are the findings of the passage. Third, in which one of the following scenarios would the cuttlefish behavior demonstrate self-control? So we have to see in what way is going to demonstrate self-control. Which one of the following cannot be inferred from Alexander Snell's experiment? Fine. So these are the questions. So we'll keep in mind these questions while we read through the passage and we look for these during the passage, right? So guys, we have read the first paragraph already. Let's start from the second. So guys, you can pause this video and you can go through this passage and let's come straight to the questions because that will take much of a time to read the passage. The first question was, all of the following constitute a point of difference between the original and modified versions of the marshmallow test, except that the former correlated self-control and future success, while the later correlated self-control and survival advantages. Okay, let's see what all finds mentioned in the passage and we'll then neglect the one which is not there in the passage. The former was performed over a longer time span than the latter. Fine. The former had human subjects while the latter had cuttlefish. The former used verbal communication with its subject while the latter had to develop a symbolic means of communication. So if you go to the passage again, so this is about a modified version of marshmallow test. So original test, children between age 4 to 6 with one marshmallow. So and waited 15 minutes, right? So the former was done on children. Then there was cuttlefish experiment. The researchers worked with 6 cuttlefish under 9 months old and presented them with seafood instead of steak. So the former was done on humans and the latter was done on cuttlefish, which is non-human entity. Hence, point C is right. So we can neglect that option. Then we have to look, let's look at the D option. The former use verbal communication. So this finds a clear mention in the passage that during cuttlefish experiment, it was not able to explain to them to not eat the food right now and to exhibit self-control. Hence, some form of symbols were introduced in the form of square, circle, etc. Hence, this also finds a direct mention in the passage. You can find it here. They trained them to recognize certain shapes that indicated when a food item would be available. The symbols were pasted on a transparent drawer so that cuttlefish could see the food that was stored inside. So hence this is about the fourth point that is being mentioned. So now we are left with option number 1 and 2. The option second says the former was performed over a longer time span than the latter. So about the former, it says they waited for 15 minutes, right? So this is about it. They waited for 15 minutes. Now let's see about the cuttlefish. While reading, if you would have read through the question before and you paid heed to this part when it came in the passage, then you would have known, okay, this is the answer and you didn't have to read it again. It becomes that easy if you read questions first. Hence, it is highly advised that you go through the questions first and it will save you much time. So while you will find that it is mentioned that the second experiment would have took 90 seconds, like maximum 90 seconds for them to exhibit, they exhibited self-control for a maximum time period of 90 seconds. Hence option number second is correct and nowhere in the passage there is something related to survival advantages. Nothing related to survival advantages has been mentioned. Hence option 1 is not what author wants to convey and hence it's the correct answer in this question. which one of the following, if true, would best complement the passage's findings? So what are the passage's findings? It tells that not only humans but other non-human entities can also exhibit self-control, and whosoever exhibits self-control is more likely to be successful. That's what the author says. So cuttlefish wait longer than 100 seconds for the shrimp drawer to open up. Okay, they waited for... Cuttlefish live in big groups that exhibit sociability. Cuttlefish cannot distinguish between geometrical shapes. Cuttlefish are equally fond of live grass shrimp and raw prawn. So let's go on the reverse chronological order from the fourth point. Cuttlefish are equally fond of live grass shrimp and raw prawn. If this point would have been truth, the findings of the author would have been contradicted, because if they are fond of both equally, then they are not exhibiting self-control, because raw prawn was served to them even before and they waited for grass shrimp because that is what they like the most. Hence, this will not complement but it will contradict the author. Hence, this is not the right answer. Let's look at the C point. Cuttlefish cannot distinguish between geometrical shapes. If cuttlefish couldn't distinguish between geometrical shapes, then the experiment is redundant, because we couldn't explain them verbally. So we came up with the idea of geometrical shapes to tell them to wait for some time. Hence, if they couldn't distinguish, then the experiment makes no sense. Hence, this is also not the right answer. It's not going to complement, but it is going to delete the hypothesis the experiment is based on, that they can go through the shapes and know if they have to wait or whatever. Let's look at the B point. Cuttlefish live in big groups that exhibit sociability. So the author says, in case of like, it is mostly discovered that the living beings which exhibit self-control are very social, or they live in societies. Hence, but this is not the case that is found in cuttlefish. So there is some discrepancy here which author was not able to explain in the passage. It is talked about in the latter part of our RC. Not every species can use self-control, but most of the animals that can share another trait in common, long social lives. So the author says that the beings which exhibit self-control normally have a big social life. Hence, if that would be true, the discrepancy that we are finding is this passage, or something which author was not able to explain would have been explained. So if this is find out, it will complement the author's finding. Okay, that cuttlefish also behaves in a similar way. It also exhibits self-control. Hence, if we find out the B point, we will get to know the author's discrepancy would be solved, and hence this would be the right answer. We need not even look at the option 1. Sorry, this was the question that we were discussing. So even if we started from the first, we started from the last in this case. Cuttlefish wait longer than 100 seconds for the shrimp drawer to open up. So if they waited for 100 seconds for shrimp drawer to open up, this is only proving that point again, that okay, they can wait for shrimp drawer because that is what they like. But this is not complementing it. It's not adding anything new. Hence, it's not the correct answer. In which one of the following scenarios would the cuttlefish behavior demonstrate self-control? So self-control would be demonstrated if they wait for grass shrimp while the other things are served for them. Right. Asian shore crabs and raw prawns are simultaneously released while a live grass shrimp roll labeled with triangle is placed in front of cuttlefish to be opened after 1 minute. Okay, this makes sense to me, because grass shrimp is their favorite. They on the second spot they like raw prawns, but they don't have any affinity for shore crabs. Hence, this can be an answer. Raw prawns are released while while a live grass shrimp raw labeled with a square is placed in front of the cuttlefish. So what does square signify? Square signify never. That grass shrimp would never be opened. Hence, they wouldn't wait if it's impossible scenario, if it's not going to open ever. Hence, this is not the right answer. We can neglect it straight away. Live grass shrimp are released while two raw prawn dryers labeled with the circle and triangle respectively are placed in front of cuttlefish. The triangle label drawer is opened after 50 seconds. If live grass shrimp is open, then it doesn't signify self-control because they are getting their favorite thing, so they won't wait for the second favorite thing. Hence, this is also not the right answer. Raw prawns are released while an Asian shore crab drawer labeled with a triangle is placed in front of the cuttlefish to be opened after 1 minute. Raw prawns are released while an Asian shore crab drawer labeled with triangle. Okay, so they don't even like Asian shore crab, so why will they wait for it? Hence, this is also not the right answer. Hence, option A is the correct one. Which one of the following cannot be inferred from Alexander Snell's experiment? Intelligence in a species is possible without sociability. This is not correct because in cuttlefish example, we have seen that they are not social, but still they exhibit self-control. And there is no mention of intelligence. The author has talked about self-control, but nothing about intelligence has been talked about. Intelligence in a species, nothing about intelligence has been talked about. This is like extrapolating self-control to intelligence. Hence, we have to be cautious in such kind of questions and we have to neglect it. Like, this cannot be inferred. A cannot be inferred for sure. Hence, this could be the answer. But to be on the safer side, we can go through the other options if we find any other options also suitable. Like human children, cuttlefish are capable of self-control. Very much true. Cuttlefish exert self-control with the help of diversions. Okay, that is also true. Cuttlefish exercise choice when it comes to food. Yes, they like grass shrimp more than prawns or Asian crabs for that matter. Hence, A is the answer. We didn't even go through the other options. So guys, in the same way, we are going to solve the other RCs as well. I just gave you the glimpse of one RC. First of all, just when it comes to RC, just skim through all the options that are there in front of you. Read first paragraph of each and every of them. Find the most familiar topic, go through the questions and give it a quick read. A quick and a read of understanding, just not reading it for the sake of it, but making sense out of it. Reading the points where the questions asked are mentioned and to read it in one go so that we save much of our time. If you would have read this RC after skimming through the questions, you would have found it very easy. You know where the answer to this question lies and you can read through only that part again, saving much of your time. That's the way to solve RCs. Also, one other thing that you need to keep in mind is keeping track of time. Because as we have limited time, so you need to have a demarcation in your mind. For example, what I kept during my time was, and I usually prefer 25 minutes for RC and then 15 minutes for VA section. So what I usually do is I solve 2 RCs and then I go to VA section and I solve 3 RCs first. And then I go to VA section, and if the time permits, I go through the 4th RC, which I'm not comfortable with. If I find it easy, because I have to avoid negative marking as well. So I don't want to lose marks there. So if I am confident, okay, that I can solve it after going through the questions and after reading the passage, I can go through 1-2 questions or more if I like. So I'll read the 4th one as well, which I find difficult. So I'll do solve the easier one, then I go to the VA section. Because what can happen sometimes is, which I found in this paper as well, that VA section was very, very easy. So the marks were on platter there. Even the parajumble questions, which are nightmare for many students, were so easy to guess that the marks were free for everyone. So you have to be cautious. Like if you're starting with VA section, but in that paper RC is very easy. So you have to keep in mind that you give enough time to RC to score there, because VA might be tough, and if you have spent enough time there and you don't have enough time for RC, then it could be a trouble for you, because other students who have started with RCs would have fetched more marks there, which could be a detriment for you. Hence, give enough time to each section. no matter which section you are comfortable with and which section to start with. And if you're finding something difficult to read or something not comfortable with, just leave it for the end and do something which you are good at first. So let's go through the BA section and I'll solve one question from each type of category. So question number 17, it mentions para summaries. McGurk and McDonald reported a powerful multisensory illusion occurring with audio-visual speech. They recorded a voice articulating a consonant ba 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 and dubbed it with a face articulating another consonant ga ga ga. Even though the acoustic speech signal was well recognized alone, it was heard as another consonant after dubbing with incongruent visual speech da da da. The illusion, termed as the McGurk effect, has been replicated many times and it has been sparked an abundance of research. The reason for the great impact is that this is a striking demonstration of multisensory integration where the auditory and visual information is merged into a unified integrated process. So the author is talking about an audio-visual phenomena that has been mentioned and it has known as McGurk effect. So in that, a new sound is perceived after the mingling of voice and visual of two other consonants. So that is the whole gist of this passage. Let's go through the option. So the first says when the auditory signal, speech signal does not match the visual speech movements, the acoustic speech signal is confusing and integration of two is imperfect. Okay, so the author says the third kind of sound is produced, but does that mean that it is imperfect? Does the third sound produce it imperfect in some way, or it can be termed as imperfect? It's not as the same that the original one is, but can it be termed imperfect, or has the author mentioned it to be imperfect? Hence, we can't say that, and then this is not the perfect summary for this passage. When the quality of auditory information is poor, the visual information wins over the auditory information. Even the visual information's consonant is not on display here. How can we say that visual information has won here? Hence, this is also not the correct answer. The McGurk effect, which is a demonstration of multisensory integration, has been replicated many times. It has been replicated many times. Does that find mention? The illusion termed as McGurk effect has been replicated many times. Okay, it has been replicated many times. But does this point can make a good summary for the passage? But does that all that the author has mentioned, like look at the fourth point and then if that has some discrepancy, we'll mark this answer. Let's go through fourth points. Visual speech mismatched with auditory speech can result in the perception of an entirely different message. This illusion is known as McGurk effect. The whole gist of the passage is what is McGurk effect. So the C point has nothing wrong as information. But does that cover all aspects that the author wants to say? Does that cover central theme of the passage? No. That is being conveyed by the fourth point. Hence, that is the correct answer. So let's go through one Tara jumble as well. Let's look at the question number 19. So even in VA section, guys, you need not go in the chronological order. You can go through the questions that you find you are more comfortable with. Like some people are very good with odd one out because you just have to eliminate an option which is not matching with other options. You can start with odd one questions. There must be 2-3 questions pertaining to it. Just start with odd one out in that case. Fine. So, for example, I found para summary fine. So I started with para summary itself. And if I am finding any other para summary question, I will go through that. Like there is one more para summary question I see. The passage given is followed by 4 alternate summaries. So I would have done this question next, and then I would have done para jumble at the later stage because I found it difficult to some extent. Okay. So let's go through the para jumbles. The 4 sentences below, when properly sequenced, would yield a coherent paragraph. Decide on the proper sequencing of the order of the sentences and key in the sequence of the 4 numbers as you answer. Okay. Also, guys, you have to skim through this title as quickly as possible, but don't forget to read it because There can be a sting in the tail. Cat is very notorious when it comes to questions. Like you must have, if you have seen my odd one out video, the questions can be asked in two ways: eliminating the option, or eliminating the option and then putting the sequence of the other four sentences. So that's how they play with you if you don't read the questions correctly. Hence, it is of paramount importance to read questions nicely. The work is more than the text, for the text only takes on life when it is realized, and furthermore, the realization is by no means independent of the individual disposition of the readers. The convergence of text and readers bring the literary work into existence, and this convergence is not to be identified either with the reality of the text or with the individual disposition of the reader. From this polarity, it follows that the literary work cannot be completed identical with the text or with the. So, in this third paragraph, I can find a keyword this from this polarity. So, some kind of polarity is being mentioned. The literary work has two poles, which we might call the artistic and the aesthetic. The artistic refers to the text created by the author, and the aesthetic to the realization accomplished by the. So the polarity that has been mentioned in the third point finds a mention in the fourth point. That is introduced in the fourth point. So we'll start with the fourth first. The literary work has two poles, which we might call the artistic and the aesthetic. The artistic refers to the text created by the author, and the aesthetic refers to the realization accomplished by the reader. From this polarity, it follows that the literary work cannot be completed identical with the text or with the realization of the text, but in fact must lie halfway between the two. Okay, so 4-3 is a pair, and 1 and 2 will be a pair because both of them is talking about text and reader. So we have to decide order of 1 and 2 between them, and if 4 and 3 would start the passage, or 1 and 2 will start the passage. Let's read 1 and 2 again. The work is more than the text, for the text only takes on life when it is realized, and furthermore, the realization is by no means independent of individual disposition of the reader. The convergence of text and reader brings the literary work into existence, and this convergence is not to be identified either with the reality of the text or with the individual disposition of the reader. So we see that the fourth point has everything. It is talking about the reader, the text, and everything. So that should be the introductory text because it introduces all the elements, and that point is carried forward in 1 and 2 itself. So 4 and 3 followed by 1 and 2 in any order should be the answer to this. So we have to see if 1 comes or 2 comes. So let's start with the third. From this polarity, it follows that the literary work cannot be completely identical with the text or with the realization of the text, but in fact must lie halfway between the two. The work is more than the text, for the text only takes on life when it is realized. So after third, 1 should follow because that argument has been taken forward in the first sentence. The work is more than the text, for the text only takes on life when it is realized, and furthermore, the realization is by no means independent of the individual disposition of the reader. The convergence of text and reader brings a literary work into existence, and this convergence is not to be identified either with the reality of the text or with the individual disposition of the reader. So 4-3 of 1-2 should be the ideal sequence of the sentence because the idea that is being conveyed in the third sentence is being carried forward in the first sentence. You need not read that much time, and in between, if you find that this is not the type of question you expected it to be and it turns out to be difficult, you can just leave it and you can go with the other question and come back to it again instead of wasting much time to it, as I've already mentioned. So if I would have to do the parajumble questions, I would see that it's a very easy question. Like it's about global warming, greenhouse, carbon dioxide, plant motility. So that is a very comfortable topic for everyone because we all must have read that since our school days, right? So it's a very easy topic to read. So I would have started with this first. So looking for familiar options is the best thing to do. So guys, that's all for today. So I hope you liked it and it was of some help for you guys. So if you have any suggestions for the subsequent videos, you can put it in the comment section and we'll look forward to your feedback. And if you want us to solve any question in particular from this paper or any other paper for that matter, you can reach out to the team inside IIM anytime, and we'll be more than happy to help you. Good luck with your preparation, guys. Thank you.